Hello, everyone. Welcome. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, depending on where you are in the world. We're so excited to have you here for our August Microsoft Viva community call. I'm your host, Lucy Hitz. I'm a senior product marketing manager for Microsoft Viva, and I'm joined here today with a couple guests I'll introduce a little later, Caribay, Garcia, and Carolyn Kalafut, who are going to walk us through some pretty tremendous research that the team has put together and that I think will greatly influence and shape how we think about workforce transformation and AI change readiness. But first, before we jump into everything on offer today, I want to remind everybody of our digital event code of conduct. Just the basics here are be kind, be respectful, and be inclusive and make sure that you're treating everyone well here. So our agenda today, we're going to talk through news and announcements for Viva, our top updates, some roadmap items, some specific product releases we're very excited about. And then we will turn to our special topic, as I mentioned, high-performing organizations in the era of AI, the latest research and what that means for you. We'll also have a Q&A, so please, in our community, leave comments and ask any questions you might have for our speakers. They're very well versed in this topic area and on tap here today to answer any burning questions you have. We have a few announcements for upcoming events. We have in August and September here, the Viva Engage Digital Safety and Moderation webinar. On September 10th, Think Like a People Scientist, so how Microsoft used Viva Insights to understand the impact of change. Microsoft Viva Glint Ask the Experts, so asking people scientists, very much like Caribay and Carolyn, what you can do to better understand employee sentiment and take action on it. And then September 11th and 12th, cohort specific to verticals for Viva Glint. So we know that different industries like manufacturing and healthcare have specific needs and compliance restrictions, and we want to make sure we're meeting those needs. So you won't want to miss those sessions if you're interested in employee sentiment, employee experience, and are in those industries. We have a few blogs here listed out and a wealth more actually that are releasing all the time. But maximize your Viva Glint experience with a Microsoft partner, our Viva People Science Research, so the state of AI change readiness, as the team will discuss a little later in their portion of the call. Their recently released report sort of sums up all of these findings, and the key findings are in that blog post, which you see in your screen now. How Glint enriches the Microsoft Viva experience, so from the top product leader at Glint, and then 8 new resources to enhance your Viva adoption. So I'm going to kind of just level set here for a look at Viva and how we help accelerate AI workforce transformation before I jump into the specific roadmap items that I want to make sure we cover today. So up top, you'll see the first sort of product areas, communications. So that encompasses leadership engagement, onboarding DEI, communities, employee campaigns, corporate comms and analytics, essentially anything you need to do to get the right message to the right employees at the right time. And that encompasses connections, engage, and amplify. Then as we move to skilling, this includes, of course, personalized learning and academies, inferred skills, reports, org knowledge, and experts, making sure you're getting the right knowledge to the right employee at the right time. So learning, skills in Viva, and answers in Viva. And then moving over to this measurement space, this is the quantitative and qualitative analytics you need to create a better business and better employee experience and accelerate, your AI workforce transformation. So that encompasses insights and Glint for those analytics and Pulse as well. And then goals as I would say, action taking and kind of monitoring progress layer on that. So I wanted to give a sort of summary of timing and new product investments here at the co-pilot level. So we have Viva Connections and Viva Pulse and Viva Goals and Viva Learning all, coming out around the same time. And then in Q4 of this calendar year, you can expect to see Insights, Glint, Insights and Glint come on board there as well. Copilot and Viva roadmap details. So these are specifically for the Copilot in Viva, Copilot and Viva features, and just wanted to briefly review these. So we have Viva Insights. On Viva Insights, we have the Microsoft Copilot dashboard and Viva Insights product updates. So we'll be kind of releasing additive features to that. Copilot dashboard access can be granted using Entra Group. So again, just making the dashboard easier to use. Moving down to goals, the M365 Copilot plugin to search and catch up on goals, Copilot assisted goal updates in goals. And then for Engage, surfacing Copilot results, questions surfacing Copilot results, verified answers. And I'm going to, I think, take us through in a few specifics, the highlights from here, and go into a little depth. So for communications, as I mentioned, there's the leadership engagement, onboarding DEI and communities, omnichannel employee campaigns, corp comms and analytics. And this all contributes to your ability to enact Copilot adoption and change management. So I'm going to talk us through some of our latest releases here. So the first is employee engagement and communication at scale. So by leveraging the power of community to drive adoption of Copilot for M365 through this Microsoft Copilot adoption community template, you really don't have to start from scratch. You already have this Copilot adoption community baked out of the box that you can simply activate in your Engage instance. And then for connecting people to answers in communities, we know that now, and this is now available, that one of the greatest challenges for organizations is connecting people to the answers they need in communities, and kind of keeping tabs on that and harnessing the collective knowledge that exists. So with this new feature, you're going to be able to get questions answered, find answers faster by asking a question. So AI will suggest related questions that have already been answered in Viva Engage. You're going to be able to get answers from people in and out of the community, so automatically guided to the right people, so that the question doesn't kind of just die on the vine there. And you'll be able to reward community members. This has been a huge ask from customers, with badges for sharing their knowledge, monitor the impact of community questions. And it's a really great use case for within private departments, communities of practice support communities. So some of the results we've seen, even internally with this release, are a 74% answer rate, a 7-hour time to first answer. And so some really, really strong early signs here. Another development within the kind of communications product area is the company branded connections destination. So this has been, redesigned and is a place where, of course, customers can explore, employees can explore news, join conversations, and connect with others. So kind of your hub. And then this kind of, for Viva Amplify, we mentioned this, I think, on the last call, but one of our, I think most important product releases for this use case is the Copilot deployment kit in Viva Amplify, which again helps you centralize communication processes in a single space, so you can save time, focus on what matters, and see how your message is being engaged with across all of you're sharing that message. So to kind of give you an idea of what's next in communications, we'll take a look at Viva for AI transformation and, this pre-built campaign. This is coming in August 2024. So with this pre-built campaign, you can really, I think, turbocharge your Copilot. It enables CorpCom folks to empower leaders and managers to leverage Viva in their AI transformation efforts by kind of highlighting specific capabilities within each module. So on the left, you'll see you can select from 2 pre-built campaigns that support your org's AI transformation. Then the Viva for AI transformation campaign will include 10 pre-drafted communications and campaign briefs with objectives and key messages. And you'll be able to communicate specific capabilities available in each of the Viva modules, so that your leaders can leverage it to communicate, upscale, and measure org's AI transformation with minimum lift. And of course, you can easily edit and then publish to multiple channels, including Outlook, Teams, SharePoint. So this is, think of it as your chief of staff for enabling this Viva for AI transformation, and very much out of the box pre-built campaign. You will also be able to, in Amplify, use campaign targets to track progress and reach your communications goals. So you now understand you've reached your goal or you haven't, what you need to do to get to the next level. So moving on to the skilling area, learning and knowledge tools that equip employees for success. Copilot Academy is out now, so you can access assigned and recommended learning. This is within Teams. You can see completed learning items, keep track of individual learning journeys, and really just help employees, no matter where they are in their journey with Copilot, get the education or answers that they need. The next piece here is skills in Viva. So AI-powered skills to grow and manage your talent. So you can understand the skills that different employees have and then deliver personalized skills-based experiences that don't feel, impersonal or not relevant. And then finally moving to the last product area and one of our most exciting, Viva for measurement. So workplace analytics, employee feedback, goal setting to improve how work gets done, and of course, your business impact. So for insights, we have the Copilot dashboard here. It's now included with Copilot for M365. You can gain visibility into workplace activities, communication behaviors, collab patterns, and that should really help with decision-making, improving business performance, and understanding, how this productivity is truly impacting your business. And we're certainly planning on some exciting updates to this dashboard, which you will see in a few months. Advanced and custom analytics. So this is the analyst workbench. This is when you need some deeper insights. You want pre-built dashboards. You want custom analytic tools. You want sort of the next layer of insight on how your employees are adopting. In May of this year, we launched Viva. We launched Viva Insights O&A, so the Organizational Network Analysis Guided Experience, and this walks analysts through the steps of generating insights and visualizations, and it's powered by those O&A metrics. So this is available now, and it really gives that illustrative view of how cross-functional collab patterns are evolving after a large-scale change or transition, such as a reorg. So very, very important, especially in this era of workforce transformation, which can seem kind of overwhelming and hard to get a handle on. Also wanted to call out the Viva Insights and Viva Glint integration. So public preview will begin in September 2024. And this is really helping accelerate and deepening org understanding, bringing together employee engagement data with behavioral and collab data from the Microsoft Graph, bringing it all into one place for you. And then finally, goals. So goals is where you can create, refine, visualize progress on goals with AI assistance and provide that clarity and drive business results. So taking what you're learning from measuring employee feedback and from measuring employee behavior and workplace behavior and bringing it into, hey, what goals do we need to set to move the business forward? And so with that, I'm going to pass it over to Caribay and Carolyn to take us home and share, their latest research and how it can help all of you.
Hello. All right. Well, we're excited to share with you all our latest research. We're also conscious that we might have customers joining us today that are not aware of what is people science, what does the Viva people science team do. So we want to do a quick intro. We're going to set a little bit of context, and then we'll get into the meaty insights pretty quickly from there. So we're a team of researchers, consultants, applied scientists with deep expertise in organizational psychology and human behavior. Overall, we use our expertise for good, we like to think. We are passionate about infusing the science behind happiness and work into the product and also into pieces like this research that help guide our customers through the big shifts that we're experiencing at work right now. So we do this in 4 specific ways. We're kind of across the organization in 4 specific ways. First, with strategic consulting. So strategic consulting with executives and HR teams to help understand their insights and drive the employee experience that they envision for their organization. We have a dedicated team of analytics who have expertise in advanced analytics to make sure we're providing research-backed recommendations, and also understand and assist with product analysis and to help us inform and improve our product. We have a customer empowerment team that is passionate about providing support to customers at scale, helping with adoption, events, learning content, product councils, many ways to get involved and interact with us to help make the product and your experience better. And then we have the product and thought leadership team, which we focus on really infusing the science of people at work, organizational psychology, and product development, and also in pieces like this. And so we're a great team of, we like to say, passionate about making people happy at work, making products successful, and making better employee experiences. So if this is our first introduction, I hope you enjoy kind of your time with us, and please do reach out if you have any questions after. But I want to talk a little bit about today's speakers. So you see the 2 of us here on the screen. So my name is Caribay Garcia. I lead our people science, product and thought leadership team specifically. So I focus on helping create and set the roadmap for the research that we put together, both to help inform how we build our product and how we kind of bring these thoughts to the market and help guide our customers. I'm joined here with Carolyn, who is the lead for this particular research project and did an absolute amazing job. So Carolyn, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Carolyn Kalafut, Principal People Scientist on Caribay's team. And yeah, where I spend a lot of my time is in this thought leadership space, especially thinking about AI as of late. But when I'm not doing that work, I'm also working very closely with our product teams over on the Viva side, thinking about, how we build out co-pilot experiences that are going to be aligned with best practice and research, how we start thinking about interconnectivity of data across the suites, and involved in a lot of private previews. So if you're excited or passionate or want to get involved in any of that, would love to hear from you on that as well.
Thanks, Carolyn. We're going to hear a lot more from Carolyn in a little bit, but I want to set the stage for what inspired us for this research. So we were really wanting to start off by understanding a little bit what was top of mind from our customers in the conversations that we were having to help inspire this research. So we can go to the next slide. So in 2023, our customers were really asking us, what makes a high-performing organization? So there was a lot of talk of like, hey, we need to be more efficient, we need to be more effective. What does performance mean? What are the indicators that people use? What is the intersection of performance and engagement? How should we think about these? Are they equals? So we did a bunch of research to understand that and understand the characteristics of these high-performing organizations. And we learned a lot. We'll go into that in a little bit. But as we came into 2024 and we're, feeling the rapid advent of AI in the workplace, we started to get more questions around how do we get ready for this changes ahead of us? So the questions we were looking to answer were a little bit more on what's the state of AI readiness at work? How will it impact the employee experience? How can we get people ready for this transformation that is coming about? How are high-performing organizations approaching this differently? What are they doing differently in terms of the transformation? And so we're going to go into each of these areas, specifically the state of AI change readiness as a part of most of this presentation and the report that you'll find linked as well. So let's start a little bit with understanding what is a high-performing organization. You might be asking yourself at that point. So a high-performing organization is where we define it as an organization that continually exceeds expectations. So from outcomes like achieving financial goals to innovation, but also those people-centric ones around engagement and retention and creating a lasting employee experience. And so what we found a part of our research, and we asked this actually, we assessed this by measuring and asking leaders to assess the extent to which their leaders or their organization always meets 10 key performance indicators from business performance to engagement. And what we learned about HPOs in late 2023 is that up to 35% of them were they're up to 35% more favorable than employees at typical organization across many work conditions like team collaboration, manager effectiveness, and upskilling. So there's a lot of the critical day-to-day conditions of work that they are just doing a lot better. So that is obviously feeding into then these better outcomes. We also found that, in particular, something that was interesting is that when it comes to making investments about their employee experience, they work much more cross-functionally. They don't do just the easy things like, yeah, I build relationships, with my fellow person in IT or my fellow person in HR. What we found in high-performing organizations is that those leaders are doing the difficult aspects of collaboration. So they're co-deciding on investments, they're having discussions of trade-offs. And it was quite the difference that we saw between high-performing organizations and typical organizations and how they approach their employee experience. So let's talk a little bit about the characteristics of high-performing organizations. And so across Microsoft research, we identified some shared characteristics around high-performing organizations. Many of these characteristics come down to things very basic to the employee experience. So really defined within these three pillars, we have high-performing organizations have engaged employees. So they help empower, energize, and really help employees feel invested in doing their best work. They do this through leadership and manager effectiveness, fostering a culture of flexibility and well-being, creating focus and alignment for their people. We also found that they have productive teams. They are effective at consistently exceeding objectives through team collaboration, efficient processes, and empowering them with the data and tools that will help them be successful. And we also found that high-performing organizations are really good at building resilient businesses. So they can adapt to changes, internal and external forces. They are good at upskilling and reskilling, and they provide support for innovation. So these were some of the key characteristics that we saw in high-performing organizations. And why this is important is because we're going to go later on into the second phase, as we said, kind of 2024. What are HPOs doing different in this era of AI transformation? And we're also going to understand a little bit about the state of change readiness overall. So, we started to understand these characteristics, and then we said, then enters AI to the chat, basically, right? And what we found is that most businesses are not starting their AI transformation from the ground floor. What we found is a lot of people already are using AI in their workplace. And this is research from our friends at the Work Labs and the Work Trend Index that came out in recently. So the report found that 75% of global knowledge workers are using AI at work already. And a lot of these tools are what we call the bring your own AI to work. Not all of these are tools that are sponsored or provided by the organization. And so we start to see that 78% of them are bringing these tools that are their own, right? So AI is kind of already at work. And so a lot of what we're hearing is a little bit of organizations saying, how can I even keep up with this pace of change? And generative AI is really rapidly gaining momentum. So what we found in our research is that enterprises need a vision and a vision for adoption and a strategy for AI long term. But it almost feels like there's not enough time to prepare, right? So in the next slide, we see basically, we haven't experienced diffusion at this scale in our industry, and we see that the curve is not really a curve anymore. It's a straight line. So with this speed, we started to want to understand how can we help organizations get prepared for this transformation ahead. So I'm going to hand it over to Carolyn now, where she's going to actually walk us through the insights of this specific research. And Carolyn, I'll let you take it away.
Yeah, sounds great. Thanks, Caribay. So like you just shown, knowing that we're really in this unprecedented context of rapidly growing usage of AI, and of course, building on all the amazing HPO research that our team had done in the past, we started out, thinking about this study with the intent of better understanding, like, what is that state of AI readiness currently? How does this relate to the employee experience overall? And ultimately, what can we learn from HPOs as we are going into this new era of AI? And before we jump right into the insights and the study findings, I do want to take a moment just to say a huge thank you to the collaborators that you see here on the screen. This was not a singular person effort. Particularly Megan has been my right-hand person here. So thank you to all stakeholders who have given us input here. So with that, setting a little bit of context for what the study was, we ended up doing a collection of self-reported survey data. This consisted of quantitative and qualitative responses. We had a total of 1,800 full-time employees globally who ended up responding. We had a really nice spread across level and also a variety of industries. And of note, we did limit the responses to just those individuals who were coming from an organization of 1,000 employees or greater. And ultimately, across those respondents, 17% fell into that population that we would categorize as an HPO. And this is where we were able to do some really great splits that Caribay is going to talk about a little bit later. So what did we learn? What did we learn from all of these responses? First thing that we actually noticed is similar to what we were seeing in the WTI research, is that employees are already using AI in their work, and this is whether or not their organization is providing them AI tools. So with this very fast acceleration of AI usage, we also find that many organizations just haven't caught up to the use that is already happening within their four walls. 67% of the people who said that they are currently using AI in our study said that they are using at least some sort of tool that is not provided by their organization, and 8% actually said that none of the tools that they are using at work are provided by their organization. So completely bringing their own tools to work. And when we think about this, although organizations do seem to be catching up to the employee usage that's already happening, we do expect that there are going to be more AI rollouts and more maturity on these rollouts in time, because there's actually really high agreement with the most senior level leaders that AI is valuable. 78% of executives say that Gen AI is critical for their organization to be a success. They also think that it's worth the time and effort and money to invest in. So it seems that while now it is very employee driven, people are bringing AI to work, we do expect that in the future there's going to be more organization sponsored rollouts and transformation efforts. Now, however, with this change, we also need to be thinking about, where people currently are at. If we go to that next slide, we see that while employees have become accustomed to pace and volume of change within their organization, it seems like that is always a constant, transformations can still generate stress and strain. When we look at the ability to keep up with change and also how much stress and strain people are feeling related to change, we see that this changes drastically as we look at it compared with those who are experiencing some type of burnout risk. And when we look at burnout risk, we're asking a variety of different risk factors, things like, conflict between home and work demands, lack of support, overwhelming workload, and how often they're experiencing this within the past month. And what we see in this chart is as we get to that point of 2 or more burnout risk factors, stress and strain from change is going to be rising. And then we start to see that ability to keep up with change really plummet as we continue into 3 or more burnout risk factors. And what this is, telling us is that when we think about AI transformation, we need to be considering current burnout and really the employee experience overall, because that is going to be a highly important factor when we're thinking about creating an environment that allows people to keep up with all of these changes. And this is why it wasn't surprising that the next finding in our research was that engaged employees, those who are having a great employee experience, are 2.6 times as likely to say that they fully support AI being integrated into their work. And what this really tells us and means is that your AI strategy needs to also be a people strategy. We need to be thinking about how we're supporting a really strong employee experience, because this is going to have benefits beyond just increasing employee engagement. And on top of this, not only do we see that employees who are engaged are feeling much more ready to integrate AI, but they're also seeing much more realized value from that AI usage versus those non-engaged employees. So when we do look at that next slide across a variety of different AI benefits, we see that engaged employees are seeing a much more significant value out of their AI usage. And if you click to that next slide, beautiful. I promise my voiceover is so much more clear when you see all these great benefits. What we see is when we're looking at engaged employees versus not across what we call REVA, the realized individual value of AI, we see that 87% are saying that it helps them to speed up their work, 85% are saying that it amplifies their productivity, and even 80% of those who are engaged are saying that AI is helping them to reduce stress. And this is in comparison to substantially lower scores, an average of 19 percentage points lower actually on for those individuals who are not engaged. And I do want to call out that while we're looking at this across all levels of usage, we also see that there are substantial differences when we look just at those high frequency users as well. So it's not just about engagement, but we're also seeing for those who are high users, if you have engaged high users, high frequency users, they are also getting much more value out of AI. And again, this is just all to underscore the importance of a great employee experience being that foundation for AI transformation. Not only, are engaged employees feeling more supportive, but they're really getting more value out of your investments of AI. So it's important to think about how we're setting people up for success. So this leads us to a next question of, okay, we know employee experience is highly important. How do we start thinking about creating a really great employee experience? And in particular, we wanted to understand what this looks like during change. And what we found is that leaders and ICs are having a pretty substantially different change experience, especially in a few key areas. We see that within communication, where 85% of leaders believe that there is consistent communication, only 55% of individual contributors are feeling the same. With skilling, we have 86% of leaders who believe that they do have good growth and learning opportunities during change. That's only 64% of ICs feeling the same way. And in measurement, where 83% of leaders are feeling included in the organizational change decisions, only 44% of ICs agree, and that is a whopping 39 percentage point difference. So really substantial. And this is worth taking note because in that next finding on the next slide, we see that, the way that people are getting AI ready does have to do with great change experiences. Yes, that is the one. What we found is that 43% of how ready someone is for AI transformation can actually be explained by their previous experience with change within their organization. So this is really huge when we consider that a substantial way that you can get your people primed and ready for AI transformation is by doubling down on those basic principles and best practices of change management, really for any change in your organization. So with that, I'm actually going to pass it over to Caribay to talk a little bit more about change experience as we click into our HPOs.
Thanks, Carolyn. I think that your last point is such an interesting one that we've been talking about, where when we saw that big gap, it wasn't necessarily something that was surprising to us. We know there are different experiences across organizations with leader and folks kind of at that IC or lower levels. I think what was interesting for us to see is that amount of influence that the change experience can have on someone just feeling ready to adopt a big technology like this that is coming fast and furious. So to your point, it's not even just about this transformation, but how are you holistically thinking about your employee experience and change experience to make it a really, people-centric approach. So with that, we're going to actually learn, what are these high-performing organizations doing? Okay, so next, as we kind of talked a little bit, our next question was to understand, what are these high-performing organizations doing differently? And then just as a refresher, in this sample, we found that about 17% of respondents reported that their organization always meets more than half or 6 or more of the performance indicators listed below, classifying them as a high-performing organization. So as we started to understand, okay, we have these high-performing organizations, let's see what they're doing differently. We saw 3 clear trends. One, they take a more people-centric approach to change. So coming off of what we heard just right now from Carolyn, we said, what are they doing differently in their change experience? And it's definitely those people elements. We also then found that they have been providing more access, and kind of enabling experimentation at a faster pace, which has resulted then in folks getting faster value out of their AI experience. And the third thing that we found is that they've been doing a much better job at connecting the dots between the vision of what's in it for me to the vision of what's in it for us as an organization. So let's go into each of those. The first finding that really kind of was a main theme across not just all, the thread of this research, even without the HPO cup, but in particular, we saw HPOs excelling at, is that, well, they take a much more people-centric approach. As you can see here, compared to 59% of employees at typical organizations, 94% of employees at high-performing organizations felt considered and respected. What a thing, right? Like, how fantastic. They also feel more included in decisions. They feel able to share feedback and felt cared for and supported. So as you can see in this chart, we see pretty wide differences between these high-performing organizations and what typical organizations are doing as a part of their change. And so across the board, HBOs are just excelling at more people-centric fundamentals, such as inclusion, support, communication, keeping people involved, providing feedback, well-being, and growth. In terms of the second major insight that stood out for us in that next slide, what we found is that HPOs were much better at conveying the vision for AI transformation. So what we were saying, they're better at connecting the dots on this AI vision. So about half of the individual contributors across all organizations say, I see the value of AI for myself. However, when we ask them about the value of AI for their organization, only 28% said it's critical for the organization to be successful. I'm gonna pause there and repeat that one real quick, because that was one that blew my mind. Usually when we talk about change, it's flipped, right? People are saying, I need to understand what's in it for me. Right now, people are telling us, I understand what's in it for me. I just don't get what's in it for us. What's the point of this in our organization? So there's a real opportunity for us to connect those dots, right? We also see, as you can see in the chart in the right, general downward trend, right? So what we see kind of individual contributors, managers and individual contributors are progressively less likely to see that value of AI in the organization level. So leaders are doing really great, they get it, they get the messaging, but they might be kind of missing out or have a little bit of blinders in terms of how much their organization is prepared at the same level for that organization value of AI, that vision. In fact, when it comes to high-performing organizations, what we found in particular is that individual contributors see the organization vision comparable or about almost just slightly a little bit more than managers at typical organizations. So think about the role that managers play in organizations in helping diffuse your message and communicate that vision. So when we see this difference of even individual contributors at high-performing organizations having about the same buy-in in terms of that organizational value, we really see an opportunity here for connecting the dots across levels on what's in it for me and what's in it for us. The next thing that we saw HPOs do really great at is provide that access-driven experimentation. So it really starts with getting your hands on the tool, right? So what we found is that employees at HPOs indicate more organization-sponsored AI tooling, with 48% saying all the AI tools they use at work are provided by their organization, in comparison to only 26% at typical organizations. So what does this mean? It's guided fun, I like to say. It's sponsored fun. It's allowing them to, in a safe way, kind of embrace the technology. So high-performing organizations are really taking the lead in the charge in that way. And we also find,
I love that point too, because one thing that we are also hearing is when people are bringing their own AI to work, they're not necessarily feeling empowered to share back what they liked, what they didn't. Like sometimes it feels a little sneaky that they're bringing it in and using it. So there's also a total miss and risk for not having that organizational sponsored AI, because then you're not getting all the rich learnings that even the people who are already experimenting are getting.
That's such a great point. It's kind of you feel like you're sneaking around in some way, right? Like you can't really tell, hey, boss, I was able to do this 2 hours quicker because I used this thing, right? And so we're missing out of this rich experience that could be learning from. And that is exactly the point of what we learned about what HPOs are doing differently. They're capitalizing on the momentum, providing this access, giving guided experimentation that is starting to trickle quicker into value. And so in fact, we saw in that second chart in this slide, we saw that HPO employees are also more likely to just understand where AI can be integrated into their work, right? And so that's a whopping 87%, that's a whopping 87% compared to 67% at typical organizations. Different chart. But what we saw is that it sheds light on this guided experimentation we we're talking about. And really specifically what's been coming up in a lot of our conversation is more focus, a little bit more focus around your function, around your role, easy ways to start to integrate and know where AI can play a role in your workflows. Instead of going too broad on your experimentation, which we'll go into in a little bit too, we see kind of the value of this guided experimentation. And so just to close out, what is this translating into for these high-performing organizations? And what we found is that they are really capitalizing on AI to reimagine the employee experience and their organization outcomes, from employer branding to financial success. Specifically, still on the previous slide, specifically employees at high-performing organizations are 1.7 times as likely to say AI will distinguish them as an employee. AI will distinguish their organization as an employer of choice. So think about that. Things we hadn't necessarily maybe considered, right? Having the top tools, having that technology, having that assistance in your day-to-day can be something attractive for employees or candidates considering your organization. We also found that they are 1.7 times as likely to say that it will boost their organization's revenue and financial success. So they're starting to see more of those connections in terms of what is the value for the organization as well. With that, I'll hand it back to Carolyn, who's going to bring us home with some of our people science perspective and learnings and practical implications.
Yeah, so we're going to close out with a little bit of the so what. We've had all of these insights, but there's, some questions about, okay, exactly how do we think about this going into our own AI transformation? And some of what we'll be sharing here, of course, is based on the research that we just did and a lot of what we just shared. But we were also hearing so much from our internal Microsoft teams. I mean, we are also going through our own AI transformation. We're right there with everyone else. And then also what we're hearing from our customers about what's working well and, what is some early indication of really best practice. So going to that first key takeaway, the first one is that, a focus on the people part of your AI rollout is going to be critical for long-term success. And I think this aligns with a lot of what we talked about today. We know that engaged employees are more AI ready. We also know that EX can be this foundation to AI adoption and transformation success. And I think especially when we think about the context of this particular change, there are so many AI features and functionalities that are really being overlaid on tools that people are already using in their day-to-day. So unlike other technology rollouts where it's a set, migration timeline, and there's going to be an on and off switch where, you can no longer use this old tool that you did before. That's just not the case for a lot of AI technology rollouts. Instead, we're asking people to simultaneously break and create new habits really on their own. I mean, they could continue to do their old way of working. We're just asking them to do it in a different way, which really requires a lot more discretionary effort from employees. So helping them to understand, what is in it for them? Why is it worth going through this effort of making the change? How does it then ladder up to not only my success, but the success of the organization is all going to be really critical. And on top of that, creating an employee experience and an environment where people have the energy to do so is going to be make or break for many AI rollouts and transformation in totality.
One point I wanted to draw attention to there, Carolyn, is one we've had a lot of discussion in our team is the fact that this is not a flip the switch change, right? It's not one of those that unfortunately, there's one day where this tool turns off and this one turns on. And what that means, it requires much more thoughtful consideration on how you're approaching the behavioral change aspect of it. Like, what are you asking people to do differently? What does it take to change behaviors over time? That can be very difficult. It needs to be a really thoughtful process. And in some ways, it's almost easier when you're forced. It's like, well, you don't have any other option, right? Here, it's going to be an interesting progressive it's going to be a progressive journey to get us there. And so thinking about, as you're going through and saying, okay, we want to be people-centric. We also know this is going to take a little bit of time. This is not a flip of the switch. How do we think about a couple of behaviors we want to start changing? What are those behaviors we want to start helping people change in their day-to-day to start to see the value of AI? So I love that point. I think it's one that's kind of not talked enough. We kind of assume, oh my God, everything now is an AI experience. And that's also not necessarily the case. is actually going to be a little bit more of an infused process that happens over time, but it is here. So it's kind of the, how do you keep up with that pace, but also thoughtfully build out that experience?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's also a difference between just the usage and truly being an AI first organization.
Mm-hmm.
We hear a lot, and I mean, have experienced in my own AI usage that I do it the old way. And when it's driving me nuts and I can't find what I'm looking for, that's when I go to Copilot. And it's still not necessarily at the full AI transformation yet. So thinking about not only how do we get people in and using it and experimenting, but then that next evolution of how do we get them to be going there first? How does it
Yeah.
seamlessly integrate into the workflows that we already have? Or how does it reimagine and reinvent workflows altogether? And I think there's still a lot that we're learning in that space. Definitely goes beyond what we saw and we're able to capture in our research, but excited to see where it goes.
Totally.
Love it. So, with that, knowing, how important this EX piece is, I just want to call out that we do have some additional information in our ebook talking about, what it looks like to take that very people-focused approach to change management experiences, particularly around how we see differences in HPOs when it comes to communication, skilling, and measurement. And what we see overall is that, communication is going to be looking like very two-way communication where people can have much more of a dialogue. They're also communicating, excuse me, more transparently in a way that surfaces the reasons for change. They're doing proactive skilling, both reskilling and upskilling with that focus on employee growth and development. How is this going to help me? How is this going to perhaps even open up new areas in my own career and development? And then also around measurement, just making sure that they're really seeking that feedback throughout change, and not only seeking the feedback, but then truly adjusting their approach based on the feedback that they're getting. And of course, we would be remiss if we didn't call out that Viva is really a fantastic tool to help facilitate effective communication, skilling, and measurement during change. So especially for those customers on the call, please reach out. We'd love to talk more about how you can leverage all of the great features. The second key takeaway that we want to leave you with is that leading in AI transformation is going to be requiring agile change rollout and experimentation, a lot of which Caribay already touched upon with the trends that we're seeing within HPOs, leaning into providing more AI access to their employees, and then subsequently also seeing much more frequent use, which creates this environment that's really rich for experimentation. And on top of this trend that we saw in our own data, I want to call out that we also see in other Microsoft research that the value that a user is going to be getting from AI is absolutely influenced by their function, their role, the industry that they're in. And what this means is that as you think about how to leverage AI in your own organization, you have to remind yourself that, use cases may be different even within your own organization. So thinking about ways to do very quick iterative experimentation and getting feedback from those who are actually using the tools can be really helpful to understand, like, where are you finding the most impact and what tools need to be deployed where to have that greatest impact. If you do go to that next slide, we also want to call out that even experimentation can look very different based on your needs, based on your resources, and also what has worked well for your organization in the past. If you already do experimentation in a certain way, definitely lean into that. Use what people are already used to and familiar with. Within our ebook, we do have an outline of a variety of different experimentation methods that can help you determine what those highly impactful use cases will be. These actually vary from very informal, general types of experimentation. This can be just experimentation on your own, telling people to go and test things out, let us know how it works. It can also be as simplistic as a resource of prompt libraries. So, what are some of those prompts that might be helpful for people to play around with? And it can go all the way up to much more formalized, organized, and very role-specific experimentation. This could be something like an AI academy for a specific role, or maybe a departmental hackathon. So a lot of variety here, and also calling out that It shouldn't be just a one and done. Think about how you can use different types of experimentation methods that may ebb and flow based on where people are at in their own AI journey, but also where the organization is in really determining where they are going to be leveraging AI. And think about how these different experimentation methods can also build upon each other.
I wanted to add there, Carolyn, this was another really interesting conversation that we had, is when you look at that matrix too, one of the things that we've been learning a lot too, to the earlier point of one size, doesn't fit all, is to think about you might need different experimentation approaches for different groups. And we go a little bit into it in the ebook, but we did a really interesting, shout out to Megan, analysis to a latent profile analysis, see like what are the different profiles of readiness and how you might actually tailor the approach to help people bring them along the journey, right? Some folks prefer a little bit more formal. When you have your early adopters, they actually probably prefer a little bit more general. They want to experiment on their own. So how do you think about like tailoring that experience and these different ways of experimentations for your different groups that you might have represented is another thing, right? You don't have to choose one of those approaches and be married to it forever. It might actually be some experimentation in itself to know which one lands with which groups to help kind of accelerate that journey.
Yeah, I love that point. And also on that slide, before I do move on, if you're like, I don't even know where to start, well, great news is we've had some colleagues who have put their heads down and thought about specifically different Copilot applications and use cases across different functions and roles. So that link that we have here of the Copilot scenario library is an amazing resource. It looks at not only different use cases, but also key performance indicators, and potential benefits of different features that you can apply to different roles based on the AI application specifically for Copilot. All right, and then our last takeaway that we will leave you with is that acknowledging the concerns is absolutely going to help you meet people where they are in their AI journey. So this actually goes along with some of what Caribay had mentioned as well, that we do see these different profiles in terms of readiness and how people are feeling about AI in general. We actually have some people who are feeling really enthused and others who, despite having really great change experiences in the past, they are still kind of skeptical of AI in general. So how do we start meeting people where they are based on their concerns? How do we get them comfortable and start mitigating some of those concerns? And what we see that is also worth noting is that even for those who do support AI, they still have concerns and acknowledge that there can be risk associated with bringing AI into the workplace. We do see that in particular, individual contributors have some heightened concerns. Only 56% say that they trust AI output, and only 47% say that they feel AI will transform work for the better. I will say this is probably the one insight that really made my heart hurt. We are an organization and a group of people who are really focused on how to think about implementing responsible AI, making AI work for the people who are using it. So hopefully some of this will shift and change as people get used to it and start to explore on their own. But I think it's a really important point of thinking about, even in your own rollouts, how are you positioning AI? Is it solely for the organization, or is it also for the people of the organization? Thinking about how to make sure that there are both sides of that messaging, because both are highly important, especially for groups that have concerns around job loss. When we did ask about those primary concerns, we saw 3 that bubbled up to the surface. The first is about data privacy and security. They want to make sure that things are safe, even as they're going through AI models. They're also concerned about job loss. This is not only loss altogether, but also potentially scope reduction or de-skilling. And then lastly, there's also concern around an over-reliance on AI models, especially when there's a potential for the AI making particular decisions that could have ramifications or impacts on employees. And really, thinking about these concerns and the fact that people are potentially in different spots with their comfort on using AI, this also brings up, I think, a really great opportunity and a really broader opportunity for collaborative leadership between IT and HR, which on the next slide we jump into a little bit more. we have often that, there are certain elements of transformation that might fall squarely into HR, other elements that fall squarely into the IT remit. This is also going to absolutely shift and change depending on your organization. But what we do want to call out is that this is a prime opportunity to take a look at, what HR is doing in the AI space, how they're thinking about the workforce impact, and also partner with IT to think about how they're thinking about technology adoption, how they're also thinking about privacy and security, knowing that that is a top concern for people, and finding where there are those really beautiful overlaps where you can tackle problems together and leverage each other's expertise to help each other have a successful AI transformation. It's really kind of this beautiful merging of the technology, but then also the human and employee experience to make sure that that AI transformation is really grabbing hold on both fronts. So with that, we'll actually go into our last slide. I know I've plugged it quite a few times, but we have an ebook with all of these great insights on top of additional, guidance and recommendations from People Science. It's available at that link. On top of that, there are also some really other great resources on our Microsoft Viva community website, but also tons of great research coming out of Work Labs as well. So please, if you have any interest, click in, read through, reach out if you have other questions. Just wanted to plug that there is so many great stuff to look at there. All right, with that, I think I am passing it perhaps back to Lucy.
Thank you, ladies. This was really, really great content. And I know so much work by the team to gather these insights. And, we use this research internally to even guide the future of our product. And then also, of course, share externally to hopefully educate and kind of be a good partner to everyone on the call and our customers. So I think we have time for 2 questions. And I'm going to start with, how can we start to assess AI impact beyond time saved? So this is a question we're starting to get from customers of, okay, I've saved time, my employees are more productive, I can now see that with tools like Copilot Dashboard, et cetera. What does that mean for my business? So curious about your thoughts there.
Yeah, Carolyn, do you want to take it away?
Yeah, I'm happy to start.
I know this is what you're passionate about.
I was going to say that, so the first one that we would always talk about is our set of Viva items. So looking at things beyond just the time saved, but even all the way down to how is this perhaps helping with stress and other measures of quality for the individual. That said, I do think that there's an opportunity then also think about how AI impact is laddering up to team and organizational success. I don't know if we've necessarily gotten the perfect way to measure. We actually have another team that is also working on thinking and really reimagining measurement in this space. But one thing that I do want to call out is we also asked an item on our survey around how would people know whether AI adoption had been successful? And we gave them this slew of different options and asked them to pick what is going to be indicative of that AI transformation success. And the one thing that we found was that actually there wasn't a clear winner that rose to the surface. There's a lot of question, I think, even for the people who are, using AI and thinking about this in their own organizations around what does that actually mean? That said, one that did start to come up to the surface was around whether or not people are integrating AI into their workflows. So I think there's going to be this piece that does require looking at, how much time is saved, but also just numbers around how many people are actually using AI in your organization. But I do think the next evolution is going to be thinking about how we can start measuring how seamlessly AI is being integrated into the work that we do, because I think that's where we're going to start really seeing big leaps and bounds around transformation and reimagining of work. And that will likely then trickle into other positive outcomes like more time saved, like more stress reduction, like more quality output.
Yeah. And go ahead, Caribay.
I was just going to add to that. I think one interesting thing we talked about at some point is that this is going to be a long behavioral change journey too. And so you can also think about some of the elements of the behavioral change journey. If your ultimate outcome is kind of time saved or a monetary, how much money was saved, there's a whole journey and slew of things that happen in between. So you can start to measure things like, how is competence in AI increasing over time as people experiment more? How are they feeling more confident about it? As they feel more confident about it, they can experiment and integrate it to the workflows in a better way. We also have aspects about motivation, right? Like, are they starting to feel like this is less threatening? The social aspects of it. Do I see other people on my team using it? So starting to get at really assessing not just, hey, here's the outcome we aspire to, but all the little components that build up that story. I think it's more of like a puzzle piece thing, and you need to start filling in the little puzzle pieces, which again, we would be remiss to say, Viva is a great platform for that. You want to take how people are feeling, what they're doing, what they're saying in different channels, and bring that together to paint a picture of what's happening. How are people engaging with their communities to get access to experts? How often are people sharing, ideas or things they've learned with people around them? And so I think you can start to build a little bit more of a clearer picture of how we got there versus just kind of jumping to what that outcome might be. It will also inform you, your time to value, individual value, team value. So a lot of work to be done there. And yeah, shout out for work that we're focused on right now and helping answer those exact questions.
Yeah, and I think before we move on to the next question, I think also a lot of it is by function. I think what we're finding too is, just to speak to those sort of steps along the way, there's going to be a very different sort of desired outcome for maybe what an HR leader or an IT leader or a biz dev leader or a sales leader, et cetera, will want to see out of it. And so that's why I think when we get to these questions of, essentially what's the ROI of AI, they get a little sticky. And I see that also as the next evolution of like, how can we build those scenarios, which kind of help paint that picture and provide that value. Okay, so we have one last question. And I think this is sort of the traditional, end of webinar question, but what would you recommend as that first step for an organization just getting started in their AI transformation?
Caribay, I'll let you kick this one off.
Yeah, I think I'll go pretty quick too. I think there's a couple things. So one, it dovetails of what we were just talking about a little bit before too. You know what you want to accomplish with your AI journey, kind of even before you start, even though it started kind of already, right? Think about at least that story that you want to tell. Which puzzle are you building? Start to assess, what pieces do I need? What's my corner piece? What are my anchor pieces? How do you start to really get behind that sense of vision? We saw that was a really important aspect of AI readiness, but another really important aspect we saw is nail your employee experience. Sometimes it's the real basics, right? People are like, oh my God, I need to have a fully fleshed academy for upskilling. And sometimes it's actually as simple as making sure that you're involving people in the journey, asking for feedback. Showing that care and consideration. We saw, I think it was 43% of AI readiness can be basically attributed to your change experience. So every change you're doing right now in an organization, that is a part of how people experience what you expect of them during a change. And so just being really thoughtful about how you're communicating to them, the message that you're saying, the vision, the tools that you're giving them to upskill. We often I think my one take would be don't lose sight of the fundamentals that can really help you get there, but also don't let perfection be the enemy, because it's going to move really fast. And so start thinking about that guided experimentation that they can get you to, a little bit more of that vision that you have set for yourself from the beginning.
Yeah, I love that. And I will underscore the do not let perfection get in the way of progress. I think there's always this, feeling like I want it to be perfectly buttoned up. Like that's what's going to create the really great employee experience, is like having it perfect, having it outlined for them. But the reality is that a really great experience through change can still be agile, can still be a work in progress, can still be a lot of co-creation. And I think that people really need to lean into that approach with AI in particular, because by the time you have a perfect rollout plan for this, the models and capabilities are going to change, they're going to shift on you. Like it's not even worth trying to get it perfect because it is so rapidly evolving. So I would say like lean into some of that discomfort because, you know, I have done change management rollouts myself. I know how painstakingly you think through every single detail. And when you don't have that detail, it can feel like you're not prepared. But the reality is, you know, that you can continue to refine as you go. So thinking about really leaning into a more agile change management model, I think is the only way that you're going to stay ahead or quite frankly, even just like keep up with all the changes.
Thank you so much, ladies, for joining today. And thank you to our audience, whether you're watching this live or on demand. Please find our speakers on LinkedIn. I'm sure they would love to connect with you and learn kind of how you're experiencing this, this sort of evolution in our workspace and in our time of work. So thank you, everybody, and we will see you at next month's community call.